just go into a relationship dynamic, that whether it's a husband or wife or two friends, and you're seeing the other person and say, oh, they need to change or they need to fix that. But then you play a part in that role also. What part do you need to change? What part do you need to fix? Especially, I do a lot of, marriage counseling, and they usually come with oh, it's her fault, it's his fault, it's her fault, the back and forth. And I said, okay, wait, but the part that you play in the role either supports the interaction or the dynamic between the two of you. So it is, I just call it everybody has a dance.
But there's something in the relationship that is happening that's allowing the behavior to continue. So whether it's the
Yes.
person doesn't feel that they have the self-worth to
Mm-hmm.
stand up to it, or whether it's because they have 5 jobs and they're not, around the family, like whatever the case may be. It's not victim blaming. This should never happen. But again, to understand human behavior so that you can see these things for what they are when they happen.
Yes, I agree. And that sometimes it's the subtlety that we miss in the relationship. And it could be something as small as communication. I feel as though you're not present in the moment for me. So now there's a disconnect. And with that disconnect, keep in mind, in every relationship, somebody is going to fill that need for me. So whether it's in the home or whether it's outside the home. I know I'm looking at
That's
you like,
right.
I know, but there is an intimacy that now is exchanging on the job or somewhere else that should be occurring in the home. But once you're getting it fed, you don't really care where it's coming from.
That's right.
And
No, that's right, because we have needs.
yes, and it starts with just something as far as communication. You're not there for me. You don't understand. And then, I mean, it's so common. It's like the same trick in the book that happens so much. You feel as though, oh, the wife or the husband could be home, got all the kids, and now you absorbed with that, and that's where your focus is. And the focus stops being on the person that you said I do to. So now you're like, okay, how do I regain that? And it's to close the outside distractions, those doors, turn it inward and say, okay, we need to just unplug. We need to get away and start the conversation over again.
So let me ask you a question. If I was a young woman and let's say I was losing this connection, and because like you said, it happens subtly. So you wind up, connecting with someone at work, and then you're like, wait, we have this connection, and maybe they have a need too that's not being met. So you're filling their needs, they're filling yours. Let's say you get to a point where you have like an aha moment and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't right. How I think a lot of females don't know how to then back up with, so they and again, you would think that it would be as simple as saying, like, look, I realize that this isn't right. I shouldn't be doing this. But a lot of times females feel like they played into it so that they play a role in it. So, how would you give advice to somebody to get out of that situation once they're in it before it goes to something physical?
All right, first thing I would say, where are your boundaries? Are we just in a relationship? Is it casual? Is it just physical? Is it a friend with benefits? You kind of need to define what the relationship looks like, one. And then if it's something that you're vested in, then you want to make the decision, is it worth saving? So there's levels to it that I would suggest. And once you make that
Oh, yeah.
decision, yes, it's something that it's worth saving, then I would say, okay, then my approach would be I would begin to close the door or slowly pull away from the outside distraction and now focus my attention that I was giving outside to inside and say, you know what, we really need to talk. There's some, and
I love
your
that.
your feelings are real to you. And see,
Yes.
sometimes we as women we play it down like, oh, I'm just feeling that. Oh, it's not there. No, my feelings are real to me, and I have a voice in the relationship. So that when I come to that, but now there may be more dynamics that now the person that you're dealing with has turned a deaf ear to you. So like now they're not listening.
One of the things I do suggest to women, if you ever need to talk to like your spouse or boyfriend or girl, whatever, um, don't start out by saying, "Can we talk?"
Right.
That's like the worst thing you could do.
Because
You're
they know what's
literally,
coming. They know
you
what's
know what's
coming.
coming. You're like, what do
Yeah,
you mean? Oh, they're breaking up with me at 3 o'clock. Like you just,
yeah.
so, and then you give the person the time to think of all of the things that you're going to bring up. And then they already start thinking about comebacks. So instead of doing
Yep,
something
they've
like
got a
that,
guard up. They put the wall up
yeah,
already. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. So instead of doing that, just do it in a moment. Just start talking. That way you catch the person off guard a little bit so they didn't have time to think about it beforehand. But I think also you have to be willing to accept what you hear, right? Maya Angelou
Yeah.
says, listen to somebody when they tell you who they are. So, and
Believe me. I want to make sure that we answer the question that you asked me too, though. What would I tell that young lady? So once we set up the boundaries as far as where's the stage of the relationship, one of the main things that I would say as far as communication, and you brought on an excellent point, as far as don't say, oh, we need to talk, because you have already put the wall up and now you're going to try and bring the wall down, and they're not listening. That's the bottom line. They're not listening. So my thing is, I always say, you take it as far as, okay, if we're on a drive, going somewhere for a minute, we go out to dinner, anywhere that it's just me and you, and now this is the focus. So even with dinner, let's leave our phones, aside for a minute, and we're going to talk, communicate, and it could be something as serious like, okay, what do you enjoy, and just what do you enjoy in this relationship? You want to see where they are,
That's a good
and then
question.
yeah, and that's going to open up the door to communication without saying we need to talk, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And not just that, think about it, right? So think about you being the person on the other end if you're listening to this. If your
Mhm.
boyfriend or girlfriend, or whatever, said to you, we need to talk, where would your mind be? As opposed to if you're sitting down and they ask you something about, like, are you happy? What do you like the best of our relationship? So
Yeah.
these are different types of questions where you're setting them up for success, not failure. So they don't have
Yes.
to be defensive.
Yes. And that's how, and that makes you approachable to them now.
It
Because
does.
if I'm not approachable, I've already shut you down. So you're talking about this young lady, look, how can you do the assessment? Because that's what you really want to do. You want to do an assessment of your relationship to reset it. And so now if you're asking that question, so he says, well, you know what? I feel like you're never home anymore, or I feel like you're too busy here. Now they're telling you without putting you on the defense. I do an assessment with both parties to see where they are, and then if I deem that it's something hidden going on that they don't want to discuss in front of each other, I meet them separately. My perception is real to me. That is my truth, if that is my perception. So it could be wrong to someone else, but to
A
me,
thousand
it's
percent.
right.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that I say all the time is perception's reality, even when it's not real. So what I mean by that
I
is
love it.
if
Love it.
somebody, yeah, if somebody perceives something. So if the parents are divorced and your 6-year-old thinks that daddy left because you asked him to drive you too many times to your friend's house, even though that might absolutely not be the case, probably, right? If the little
Right.
kid's in their room crying, thinking, I know daddy left because I asked him to drive me too many times, that's that kid's perception. That's their reality in that moment.
And that is real to that kid. That is
Very
real.
real.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we have to make sure that we don't, like throw it to the side, because this is where the things start, is when we're young. So when we say something to the kid like, oh no, like, are you ridiculous or whatever?